services in the community. Our approach is guided by the latest research and emerging evidence. Let's speak to actor and charity manager of Seed Eating Disorder Support, Gemma Oaten, who's spoken openly about her own struggle with an eating disorder. You've got company, Gemma. We're fascinated by who's there with you. Who's this?
You're going to have to meet Ruby. My anxiety is so high right now that
she's is it? Well, you're amongst friends, and we're delighted that Ruby's joined you. Tell us, what do you think of the findings of this report?
Oh gosh, I didn't sleep last night. It could be potentially monumental in the treatment for those with eating disorders, and it could potentially help save thousands of lives. As Hope touched on, we were tweeting this morning, this has been years and years and years of us speaking out consistently about how waiting for the weight to change isn't going to change what is already there. It's not about weight, it's not about numbers, and we are constantly drip fed numbers of calories, numbers of the scales, and anorexia is only represented by 10% of those with eating disorders. I myself nearly died from a heart attack, and I've never spoken publicly about it before, but I think it's important I say this because I had bulimia. Sorry, Ruby's just wagging her tail. But because I had bulimia, my electrolytes were so low, my potassium levels were so low that I was having a heart attack, and my mum had to drive me to the hospital. And that journey started when I was 10 years old and I was turned away because I wasn't low enough in weight to have a problem. This is huge.
So dispensing with the body mass index is a really good idea, you think?
Oh, absolutely. The amount of people that have come to us, especially over lockdown, who have presented signs of bulimia and binge eating has increased by 121% from 2019 to 2020. And they are not getting the treatment that they need. We had a support group just the other night, and the majority of those there were those who were struggling with binge eating disorder and bulimia, but they couldn't access the medical care that they needed. And there was one parent who was beside herself because her daughter was £4 off. £4 off being deemed to be ill enough to get help. You wouldn't go to a GP and say, I'm suicidal, and the GP turn around and say, well, I tell you what, go and stand on the edge of a cliff and then see how you feel. And I don't mean to be flippant about it, but how nonsensical is that? How dangerous and how damaging.
You mentioned the pandemic, Gemma. How hard has it been during the last 12 months when people have faced months at a time of lockdown? Why has it been so hard and had such a bad effect on people with eating disorders?
An eating disorder is a mental health illness, and it thrives on being in control and manipulating and making the person feel ashamed and lonely. Now we're in a world of lockdown where we're on our own, we're isolated, we've got no control over anything. So of course people are going to change their habits accordingly. Food is the symptom, it is not the cause. And the root of all of this is about what is going on in the mind. And lockdown has put us all under this microscope, under this pressure cooker. And especially then you add the whole obesity narrative about prescribing bicycles because somebody is obese. I mean, you can't address the physical and not address the mental health side as well.
Now, the government has said in that statement we just read that they've got record funding to expand dedicated services, which will be based on latest research and emerging evidence. What change would you want to see then to make sure that nobody slips through the net anymore?
I want to see where the money's going, and I want to see things being implemented. I'm 37 this year. My anorexia started when I was 10 years old, and we're still going through the same narrative. This money, wherever it's going, needs to be distributed accordingly. They need to start looking at the voluntary sector, Seed, Eating Disorder Support Service, a group, a charity that was set up by my parents because we couldn't get the help that we needed. They need to start collaborating and putting things in place rather than waiting to go through a system because the system is failing them.
So if somebody has an eating disorder and they're looking for help, I mean, just acknowledging it is a huge step because of this sort of shame and humiliation that you've talked about. Where would you point people in the first instance? Because it is a lot of women, but also men also suffer this too.
Anyone, eating disorders do not discriminate, as it said in your VT, just a moment ago. I would urge them to speak out to a loved one or somebody they trust in the initial stages, and then also look to go to their GP. Obviously, we're talking about the fact that GPs are turning people away, so that's not always going to be the answer, but it's a first port of call. And if not, we as a charity are here as a support group of lived experience, being personable and giving support and empathy to those with eating disorders. We've also got an eating disorders educational toolkit that would be amazing if we could get that into schools, because early intervention and education is key. And I have been emailing and trying to get the attention of MPs for years now, and unfortunately Robert Halfon has been amazing, and we've already had a meeting with him about how we can implement this to get it into schools. But we, just as normal everyday people, can make such a difference. We are the decision makers, but we can be the change makers.
If somebody's listening to this and they're feeling really desperate, perhaps it's a person suffering from an eating disorder or friends and family trying to support them, what's your message of hope that you can get better with the right support?
Look, I nearly died 4 times, and I remember watching Emmerdale and Holby City and all the shows that I eventually got on, but back then thinking that I had no chance of hope and survival and recovery. But there is hope. Please never feel ashamed. It doesn't matter what weight you are. Please speak out and get help. There is no embarrassment. There is no shame attached. You are not alone, and we are here to support you. And you are doing the bravest thing by stepping up and speaking out and getting the help and support that you need, because you will not be turned away from us.
Gemma, it's been fantastic to talk to you. Thank you so much for sharing that optimism with us. Gemma Oaten, good luck and thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching BBC.